There comes a moment, silent, almost imperceptible, when you realize that something in your rhythm no longer matches the rhythm of life. You wake up, you scroll, you respond, you deliver. But somewhere between the alarms and the dopamine, the compass of your inner world began to spin without direction. You move, yet you're not going anywhere. You try to accelerate, but acceleration has become your new form of paralysis. The more you do, the less you feel. And the less you feel, the more you lose the axis that once guided you toward something meaningful. This is not laziness. It's not confusion. It's dissonance, a vibrational mismatch between who you are and what you've become. Modern life has mastered the art of scattering the soul. Every app, every urgency, every metric pulls you 1 degree off your true north. 1 degree seems nothing, but 1 degree repeated every day leads you to another world entirely. A world of noise where clarity becomes suspicious and stillness feels like failure. You no longer hear your own thoughts because they've been layered under the voices of everyone else. The algorithm has become your subconscious, the feed your new religion, and deep down, a subtle sadness whispers, you were meant for something more than reaction. Yet when you stop to listen, silence frightens you. It feels like death, when in truth it is the doorway back to life. We were not taught to listen to silence. We were taught to fear it. We were taught that purpose must be found, conquered, achieved, like a trophy on some invisible scoreboard. But purpose is not discovered in noise, it is revealed in resonance. It does not shout, it hums. It does not demand, it calls. The ancient Hermeticists called this dissonance the sleep of the mind. When the instrument forgets it was made to vibrate with the cosmic harmony, the soul becomes like a compass held too close to metal, confused, restless, always spinning but never pointing north. The tragedy of the modern world is not ignorance, it is misalignment. Everyone is moving, but few are aligned. Pause for a moment. Feel your breath. That's the rhythm that was here before goals, before fear, before comparison. You have been conditioned to measure your worth by how much you produce, but the Hermetic truth is simpler. Your value is measured by how coherent your vibration becomes. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions move as one, even the smallest act becomes sacred. But when they scatter, purpose becomes noise. The Hermetic law of mentalism teaches that all begins in the mind. Everything that exists first existed as vibration, as idea, as focus. So if your inner compass is erratic, the outer world mirrors confusion. The problem is not the world, it's the field you project upon it. We live in an era that worships speed, but forgets direction. People chase momentum, not meaning, and the more they chase, the further they drift from what truly animates them. It's not that purpose disappeared, it's that you moved out of its frequency. You tuned into fear, into productivity, into comparison, and the signal was lost. Hermetic wisdom calls this inversion of polarity. When energy meant for creation is trapped in reaction, every notification becomes a command, every pause becomes guilt. You've mistaken exhaustion for purpose and effort for alignment. But the mind, like a magnet, cannot attract what it contradicts. The first key is recognition, not action. The Hermeticists never began transformation by doing more. They began by observing what was already vibrating within. Look closely. Beneath the noise, there is still a hum that hasn't forgotten the way. You can feel it in rare moments. When you stop scrolling, when you walk without destination, when you sense that this isn't it. That discomfort is not failure. It's your compass trying to realign. The pain of disorientation is not punishment. It's the magnetic field correcting its spin. The soul aches not because it's lost, but because it remembers. If you could hear your own vibration right now, it would sound like static. Thoughts running without rest. Desires layered upon desires. Contradictions colliding in silence. The law of rhythm tells us that everything moves in cycles. Rise and fall, inhale and exhale, expansion and retreat. But the modern mind resists retreat. It confuses rest with regression. It resists the downward arc of the rhythm, and thus it breaks the law. And when you break the law of rhythm, life breaks your illusion of control. You burn out not because you work too much, but because you refuse to move with the natural oscillation of existence. The Hermetic path begins where resistance ends, where you let the rhythm move you, instead of forcing the rhythm to obey your will. So what does it mean to be aligned with purpose? It means to remember that purpose is not found, It is revealed through coherence. Imagine a compass inside your chest, its needle trembling between obligation and truth. Every lie you tell yourself, every yes that should have been no, every fear disguised as ambition, each of these is a magnetic distortion. Over time, the needle loses sensitivity. You stop feeling what's true because you're tuned to survival. The Hermetic principle of correspondence teaches, as within, so without. If your inner compass is misaligned, your external path will mirror confusion. You can't walk in clarity if your mind vibrates in noise. In truth, your compass has never been broken, only clouded. It spins because you stand too close to forces that distort it. The Hermeticists called these distortions false fires, external energies that imitate light but burn clarity. The noise of constant stimulation, the obsession with productivity, the addiction to approval. These are modern versions of ancient illusions. They promise direction, but deliver exhaustion. They promise recognition, but drain presence. You cannot align with purpose while feeding from what fragments you. The first act of power is withdrawal, not isolation, but energetic recalibration. When you remove the magnet of distraction, the compass begins to remember true north. Silence, then, is not emptiness, it's purification. It's what the alchemists called solve, the dissolution of false forms. You dissolve identities, expectations, illusions. The old you, the one chasing everything, begins to fade. At first it feels like death, but the law of rhythm reveals that every death is a preparation for a higher cycle. Every retreat is an inhale before the next expansion. When you surrender to this law, life stops feeling like chaos and starts sounding like music again. The silence between the notes, that's where purpose lives. But the ego resists this. It wants results, not rhythm. It wants control, not coherence. It asks, what's next? When the real initiation begins with, what is now? The Hermetic way teaches that alignment is not a goal to achieve, but a vibration to sustain. You don't chase purpose, you tune into it. And the tuning begins by noticing the dissonance you've been avoiding. Every irritation, every emptiness, every fatigue, they are signals, not flaws. They are the friction between who you are and the frequency you inhabit. When you start listening, transformation begins. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that doesn't show your face but your frequency. It would show the shape of your thoughts, the tone of your emotions, the rhythm of your actions. Would they move in harmony? Or would they clash like instruments playing different songs? The Hermetic path invites you to listen to that orchestra. Before you change the world, you tune the instrument, and the instrument is your mind. The law of mentalism declares, the all is mind, the universe is mental, meaning everything begins in thought, but thought alone is not enough. It must be directed, disciplined, aligned with rhythm. That's the first act of creation, the first practice of purpose. Most people live in reaction, not creation. They respond to the noise of the world instead of composing their own frequency. To align with purpose is to become composer again, to reclaim authorship of your vibration. This is not philosophy, it's physics. Every thought emits frequency. Every emotion amplifies it. Every action anchors it. The mismatch between these three, thought, feeling, and deed, is what we call confusion. Alignment, therefore, is the restoration of coherence between these layers. You think truthfully, feel coherently, and act rhythmically. That's Hermetic alchemy in motion, transforming inner chaos into ordered resonance. Purpose does not ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be precise, to know what you are vibrating, and to correct it when it drifts. The compass within you is subtle. It does not scream. It whispers through intuition, discomfort, synchronicity. But in a world obsessed with volume, whispers are easily missed. That's why the first Hermetic practice begins not with speaking, but with listening. Listening not with the ears, but with the entire field of your being. Silence is not absence of sound. It is the presence of awareness. Only in awareness does the needle begin to settle. At this stage of the journey, you might feel a strange fatigue, as if you've been running in circles. That is not weakness. It's the exhaustion that precedes surrender. The Hermetic path always begins with nigredo, the black phase of confusion, dissolution, and doubt. It's the necessary darkness before the light of purpose can be perceived. The compass spins wildly right before it stabilizes. Trust that spin. It's not chaos, it's recalibration. You're not lost, you're being reoriented. The only mistake would be to run again, to seek new noise instead of facing the silence that's calling you home. So before we speak of practices, understand this. Purpose cannot be taught, only remembered, and remembrance begins with stillness. You can't align with your true path while running from yourself. The Hermetic initiate learned this in the Temple of Silence, where the only sound was the heartbeat, the metronome of the cosmos. That same rhythm lives within you. Every breath, every pause, every moment of awareness is a return to coherence. You don't need more information. You need integration. The compass realigns when you stop forcing and start feeling. That is the first initiation. To stop mistaking motion for meaning. To step out of the current of noise and remember that clarity is not achieved. It's revealed. You were never disconnected from purpose. You only stopped listening to its tone. Beneath the static, beneath the layers of mental interference, it still hums, waiting for you to remember the sound of your own truth. Maybe no one ever truly named what you've been feeling. That quiet tension between what you do and what you are. The fatigue of moving endlessly, yet sensing you're not moving at all. You've carried questions that language could never answer, and so life began answering in silence, because silence is the psyche's last attempt to speak when words fail. You didn't arrive here by curiosity. You were called by coherence. Certain messages don't travel through algorithms. They travel through resonance. They appear when your inner field becomes ready to listen. If something in you stirred while you listened, not excitement but recognition, it means your compass just found magnetic north again. And from now on, you won't be able to return to sleep. This is not entertainment. It's remembrance, a reorientation of the psyche toward its original axis. If you felt that subtle click inside, that stillness that feels like truth, press like right now, not as reaction, but as ritual. That single act says, I'm awake. And when you subscribe, it's not to a channel. It's to the part of you that has been waiting for this frequency to return. You already know it. Once the compass realigns, you can't pretend you're lost anymore. Everything you see outside you is, in truth, an echo. Every event, relationship, opportunity, each is a reflection of an inner vibration you've sustained long enough for the universe to materialize. The Hermeticists called this law mentalism, the principle that everything begins in the mind, that the universe itself is a thought held by the all. You have heard that before, perhaps as an idea, but few truly live it. To live it means to recognize that every dissonance, every lack, every delay in your path is not punishment, but projection. The world is not happening to you, it's happening from you. And until you see your mind as the true field of creation, you will keep fighting shadows on the wall, forgetting that the source of the movement is the flame within. The modern mind, however, is rarely conscious. It is reactive. It doesn't create, it replicates. It echoes fears, repeats conditioning, loops desires that were never its own. So the first step toward purpose is not figuring out what you want. It is realizing who is doing the wanting. Most people's desires are borrowed frequencies, projections of collective hypnosis. They chase what they were told to want, vibrate what they were trained to fear, and then wonder why their compass spins in circles. The Hermetic mind doesn't chase. It observes, selects, and directs energy consciously. It is a sculptor of vibration. It knows that every thought is a brushstroke in the invisible painting of the real. That's why ancient initiates trained silence before speech. Because to speak without consciousness is to cast spells you don't understand. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a field of subtle particles, thought forms, images, beliefs, each one vibrating at a specific tone. When you think of something repeatedly, that tone becomes dominant. It creates gravitational pull, a pattern that attracts equivalent forms in the physical world. You don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you are vibrating. That's why a person can desire success but attract chaos, can pray for peace but live in inner war. The surface thought says, I want, but the deeper field says, I doubt. The universe listens to the deeper field. To align with purpose, therefore, is not to think louder. It is to think clearer, because clarity is coherence, and coherence is power. The mind is the invisible architecture of destiny, and destiny, in Hermetic language, is not fate. It's frequency crystallized through rhythm. That means the patterns you repeat in thought become the cycles you live in time. Every time you say, "I always end up here," you are reaffirming a circuit, and the circuit obeys. This is not superstition, it's neurobiology and vibration meeting in the same law. Your neurons fire in patterns. Your emotions charge those patterns. The field amplifies them. To change your life, you must interrupt the vibration. Not at the level of behavior, but at the level of belief. And belief, for the Hermeticist, is not opinion. It is frequency sustained by conviction. Pause here. Think of the last time you felt truly aligned. Not excited, not distracted, but right. Perhaps it was during silence. Perhaps while creating or walking or simply breathing. That rightness was not emotion. It was resonance. Your mind, body, and soul were momentarily oscillating at the same wavelength. Purpose is simply that coherence made permanent. To live by purpose is to stabilize resonance. To think, feel, and act as one integrated field. When that happens, even your smallest gesture carries precision. You speak, and reality answers because the signal is clean. You move, and doors open because there is no internal resistance. That is why masters seemed magnetic. They didn't manipulate reality, they matched it. But the world around you feeds you dissonance. It profits from your confusion. It teaches you to fragment, to think one thing, feel another, and do the opposite. That's why you feel drained. You are spending energy to maintain contradiction. Every lie told to oneself is an energetic leak. Every unaligned action is a short circuit in the field, and the purpose you seek cannot coexist with that fracture. Purpose is the condition of psychic unity. When you are one with yourself, the universe responds as if you are one with it, because you are. Most of us live inside a rented architecture of thought, inherited blueprints from parents, culture, religion, social media, but these are not yours. They are borrowed structures you keep furnishing with your energy. You must reclaim authorship of your inner space. That is the first Hermetic act of power, to become the architect of your own vibration, to choose consciously what you allow to take root in the soil of your mind. Every thought you water will grow into experience. Every belief you tolerate will shape your perception. The Hermeticist doesn't let thoughts run wild like weeds. He cultivates them like sacred herbs. He knows that mind is not a mirror, it's a mold. There is a profound psychological truth beneath the metaphysics. You see what you expect to see because perception is prophecy. The psyche filters reality to confirm its own story. So if you believe you are lost, your mind will highlight confusion and ignore guidance. If you believe you are guided, the same world will suddenly reveal signs, coincidences, synchronicities. That's not magic. That's selective perception harmonized with the law of correspondence. As within, so without. Reality doesn't mock you. It mirrors you. So when the outer world feels meaningless, it's not because purpose vanished. It's because your inner narrative fell out of alignment with truth. The task is not to change the world, but to recalibrate your lens. And that recalibration begins with awareness. Awareness is the solvent of illusion. You can't transcend what you don't observe. Every Hermetic practice begins with this: observing the movement of thought without fusing with it. The moment you become the observer, you separate consciousness from chaos. And that separation is creation. Because once you can witness the thought, you're no longer trapped by it. You've become the field that holds it. That's what it means to be in the world but not of it. You act within the illusion, but your center remains in the real. Now consider this. What if every problem you face is not an obstacle, but a mirror revealing an inner law you've ignored? The delay is teaching rhythm. The loss is teaching polarity. The confusion is teaching mentalism. Life itself is an initiatory classroom disguised as circumstance. When the Hermetic initiate faces a pattern repeating, he doesn't curse it, he studies it. Because repetition is life's way of saying, you haven't yet mastered this frequency. Mastery then is not control over outcomes, but fluency in vibration. Once the lesson integrates, the outer event dissolves, not because you escaped it, but because you outgrew it. You don't need to force purpose, you need to stop resisting it. Your purpose is already encoded in your vibration, like a seed that knows what tree it must become. But if you keep shaking the soil, doubting, comparing, the seed cannot sprout. That's what anxiety truly is. vibration trapped between potential and surrender. The antidote is rhythm. To align mind with rhythm is to give your purpose time to unfold without interference. Every breath, every day, every cycle, all are instruments of the same orchestra. The mind conducts. When the conductor learns to trust the tempo of life, music emerges. That's why Hermetic practice is not self-improvement. It's self-tuning. Let's make this practical. Each time you catch yourself thinking in contradiction, I want change, but it will never work. Notice the fracture. You've just seen the split between mind and faith. At that moment, pause. Breathe until the statement feels coherent. Replace but with and. I want change, and I am learning to sustain it. This small linguistic shift has immense vibrational consequence. It turns conflict into flow. That's Hermetic psychology in action, bridging thought and rhythm through conscious wording. The psyche doesn't obey commands. It follows patterns. Change the pattern, and the behavior follows. You are not your thoughts. You are the thinker, the silent field in which thoughts appear and dissolve. When you identify as the thought, you become reactive. When you identify as the thinker, you become responsive. And when you identify as the field, you become creative. That's the hierarchy of consciousness. Reaction, reflection, creation. Most stay at the first level. Hermetic practice begins at the third. That's where you stop asking, what is my purpose? And begin to embody the question, what vibration am I broadcasting to reality right now? Because the universe doesn't respond to what you think you deserve. It responds to what you are being. And being is thought plus emotion plus action moving in coherence. So when these three align, purpose finds you automatically, because you've become the frequency where it already exists. This is why the masters spoke little of goals. They knew that when the mind aligns, destiny unfolds with mathematical precision. Purpose isn't an achievement. It's an inevitability. You don't chase it. You resonate into it. Every psychological blockage, then, is not a flaw, but a teacher. Fear reveals where the field is constricted. Doubt reveals where belief has not yet matured. Projection reveals what remains unintegrated. To think hermetically is to interpret every emotion as encoded information. Instead of rejecting discomfort, you decode it. You ask, what principle is this teaching me? That shift turns pain into pedagogy. That's the moment the mind stops being your cage and becomes your laboratory. When you understand this, the world softens. You realize nothing external truly opposes you. It only mirrors what you've neglected internally. The relationship that frustrates you teaches vibration of patience. The job that suffocates you teaches rhythm of authenticity. The confusion that exhausts you teaches polarity. The art of holding opposites until they unify. Each lesson refines the compass, aligning thought and life again. The Hermetic path isn't escape from reality. It's mastery of perception within it. And in that mastery, purpose is no longer a destination. It becomes a state of mind. When the mind becomes clear, the path becomes visible. You don't walk toward clarity, you walk from it. That is the paradox. The clearer your inner field, the more effortlessly life organizes around you. This is not metaphoric. It's energetic precision. The universe rearranges to mirror coherence, because coherence is creation. So if you still feel lost, remember, your compass points wherever your attention rests. Attention is the steering wheel of consciousness. Where it goes, energy flows. Withdraw attention from confusion, and confusion collapses. Place attention on clarity, and clarity amplifies. You are not powerless. You are participating in the equation of the real. Every moment you choose awareness, you reprogram the field. The mind is not your enemy. It is your temple. When you enter it with reverence, it responds with revelation. When you misuse it, it becomes labyrinth. The difference lies in one gesture, remembering that you are the one who thinks. Purpose, then, is not outside the temple. It is the fire burning at its center. All you need is to learn again how to tend that flame. You've been here long enough to feel the law moving through you. The words aren't theory anymore. They're rhythm. If you're still here, it's because this truth has recognized you. Every seeker reaches this moment, the midpoint, and when watching becomes remembering. So stay, not as a viewer, but as part of this frequency. Let your presence be known, not to us, but to yourself. Whisper inwardly, this rhythm is mine. That sentence is your seal. It marks the moment when seeking ends and belonging begins. We were taught to push harder, plan better, move faster. The modern psyche worships effort, the cult of constant motion. But the Hermetic mind knows that force without rhythm is chaos. Just as music without silence becomes noise, purpose without pause becomes pressure. And that's where most seekers lose themselves. Not in ignorance, but in excess. They don't lack direction. They lack timing. They mistake acceleration for evolution, momentum for meaning. But the universe doesn't respond to your effort. It responds to your rhythm. Every organism, every planet, every breath obeys the same pulse. Expansion and contraction, day and night, inhale and exhale, growth and decay. To move against this law is to fracture your own energy. You can't be in harmony with purpose if you're at war with rhythm, because rhythm is not a schedule. It's the living intelligence that keeps all things in balance. The Hermeticists called it the breathing of the cosmos. They understood that when you align with this breathing, your actions stop being labor. They become inevitability. The tree doesn't try to bloom. It simply follows the rhythm of the sun. The river doesn't decide where to go. It flows according to the slope carved by time. Only the modern mind resists the law that gives it life. Only the human tries to force what should unfold. There is a moment in every seeker's path when willpower begins to fail. You plan, you visualize, you affirm, but nothing moves. And in that stillness, panic rises. You think you've lost momentum, when in truth life has shifted from expansion to contraction, and your refusal to rest becomes the very source of suffering. You can't plant new seeds while the soil is still busy digesting the old. The pause is not punishment, it's digestion. That's why every sacred text speaks of the Sabbath, not as a religious command, but as a universal principle of regeneration. Without pause, power degenerates. Without rhythm, intention burns out. You can't breathe in if you never exhale. This is why people feel stuck. They're not stuck. They're out of sync. They're trying to force the tide when the tide is retreating. They're trying to bloom in winter. When you understand the law of rhythm, you realize that even apparent stagnation is sacred. It's the invisible half of creation. The Hermetic mind doesn't fight seasons. It learns to read them. When life contracts, you don't resist. You refine. When life expands, you don't overthink. You act. And in this dance between stillness and movement, purpose emerges organically. That's why ancient alchemists never rushed transmutation. They respected timing as the highest intelligence of matter. Look at your own life. There are moments when everything flows. Coincidences, clarity, synchronicities. Then suddenly it stops. People leave. Plans dissolve. Opportunities vanish. The untrained mind panics. The Hermetic mind bows. It understands that rhythm has shifted. The pulse that was external must now turn inward. If you resist, you fracture the cycle. If you surrender, you conserve the current. And that conservation becomes power. The wise don't waste contraction. They use it as incubation. They retreat not to escape, but to consolidate. But here's the psychological truth. The ego fears the pause because the pause confronts it with emptiness. And emptiness is where its illusion of control dissolves. That's why silence feels unbearable to those addicted to effort, because silence reveals who you are without the performance. Yet this is where the true Hermetic transformation begins. When will dissolves into rhythm. When doing gives way to being. When the mind finally stops shouting and starts listening to the deeper pulse beneath thought. Consider your heartbeat. It expands and contracts continuously. If it stayed contracted, you'd die. If it only expanded, you'd die as well. Life is the dance between both. Now ask yourself, how many times have you tried to live in permanent expansion? Always growing, producing, achieving without allowing the contraction that renews strength? That's why burnout is not weakness. It's a spiritual message from the law of rhythm. You've broken tempo. The cure is not more speed, it's recalibration. Purpose moves in waves. Sometimes it rises. Inspiration, creation, manifestation. Sometimes it falls. Silence, introspection, reordering. Both phases are sacred. The law of rhythm ensures that after every descent there is ascent, and after every ascent a descent that humbles the spirit back to wisdom. The trick is not to cling to one phase over the other. If you cling to expansion, you become manic. If you cling to contraction, you become depressed. the Hermetic mind remains centered, aware that both are expressions of the same pulse. That is the secret of serenity, not the elimination of rhythm, but the mastery of flow. The modern illusion tells you to never stop, but stillness is not the opposite of progress. It is its foundation. Every seed grows in darkness before breaking the soil. Every insight emerges from silence before becoming word. Every movement is born in the invisible before becoming visible. That's not mysticism, that's law. Even the atom oscillates between presence and absence billions of times per second. Creation is not a line, it's a pulse. You are made of that pulse. To fight it is to exhaust yourself against the current of existence. Rhythm is also psychological. Your emotions have tides, your creativity has seasons, your relationships, your energy, your sense of purpose, all breathe in cycles. When you learn to observe your own internal tides, you begin to act with precision. You stop forcing inspiration when the field is in rest. You stop doubting yourself when silence falls. You learn to interpret pauses as gestation, not punishment. And that changes everything. Because instead of fearing stillness, you begin to draw power from it. When rhythm replaces will, you stop chasing purpose and start embodying it. You realize that the universe doesn't reward the fastest. It aligns with the most attuned. Effort alone cannot move the cosmic machinery. Only coherence can. To align is to listen. To listen is to synchronize. And to synchronize is to remember that you are never separate from the music. You only forgot the steps. The Hermetic initiate learns to move again with the great symphony, trusting that the pauses between notes are as essential as the notes themselves. Let's bring this down to a practical plane. Every time you feel lost or blocked, instead of asking, "What should I do?" ask, "What phase am I in? Am I in expansion, meant to express, to act, to share? Or am I in contraction, meant to rest, integrate, realign?" Once you know the phase, you stop fighting the law and begin flowing with it. That single awareness saves you years of resistance. The purpose that felt far suddenly feels near, because you're no longer out of beat with yourself. You've stopped forcing rhythm and started becoming rhythm. Psychologically, this is where the will matures. In early consciousness, we believe control equals strength. In awakened consciousness, we learn that surrender equals mastery. Surrender, in Hermetic sense, is not weakness, it's intelligence. It's understanding that the part cannot overpower the whole, but it can harmonize with it. The ego tries to control the current. The self learns to surf it. That is the evolution of will. From domination to cooperation. From "I will make it happen" to "I will move with what wants to happen." Once this shift occurs, something profound changes. Life begins to feel timed. Events align. Synchronicities cluster. People appear exactly when you need them. Because you've stopped interrupting the rhythm that was already orchestrating your path. This is what Hermetic masters meant when they said, "The universe conspires with those who move with it." Not because life bends for you, but because you've stopped resisting its tempo. You've become an instrument again, perfectly tuned, perfectly timed. At this point, will doesn't vanish. It evolves. It no longer fights the tide. It becomes the conscious pulse that rides it. Will becomes rhythm-aware, precise, gentle, exact. It acts when the current is strong and rests when the current recedes. It doesn't need constant validation because it knows that quiet phases are as sacred as breakthroughs. The mature will is rhythmic will, the one that listens more than it demands. And this rhythm is not abstract. It lives in your body, your heartbeat, your breath, your nervous system. All are microcosmic mirrors of the cosmic pulse. When you regulate your breath, you are literally syncing your personal rhythm with the rhythm of the universe. That's why every Hermetic practice includes breathing. Breath is the bridge between thought and manifestation, between intention and embodiment. When you breathe consciously, you rejoin the order of creation. The compass steadies, the vibration clears, the will rests inside the law. From this place, life feels different. You stop feeling like you're behind. Because rhythm has no competition, only coherence. You realize that purpose unfolds exactly on time, not your time. And you begin to sense a quiet confidence, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that simply knows. You're no longer trying to make things happen. you're participating in what is already happening. That's when anxiety dissolves, because anxiety is just will forgetting the law of rhythm. To live in rhythm is to trust that contraction is never the end, it's preparation. Every silence precedes a new symphony. Every loss clears the field for new alignment. Every pause teaches patience, humility, and timing, virtues no algorithm can replicate. The Hermetic initiate doesn't chase meaning. He moves in measure, and in that measure, he finds himself carried by something far wiser than personal desire, the pulse of the all. So if you feel tired, don't force. If nothing moves, don't panic. Withdraw, breathe, listen. You may be in the sacred descent that precedes ascent. The law of rhythm is not an obstacle. It's a compass disguised as time. When you move with it, purpose stops being a pursuit and becomes your nature. You no longer need to find your path. You become the path itself. You've been here long enough to feel the law moving through you. The words aren't theory anymore. They're rhythm. If you're still here, it's because this truth has recognized you. Every seeker reaches this moment at the midpoint when watching becomes remembering. So stay, not as a viewer, but as part of this frequency. Let your presence be known, not to us, but to yourself. Whisper inwardly, "This rhythm is mine." That sentence is your seal. It marks the moment when seeking ends and belonging begins. There is a moment when philosophy must become silence. You've heard the laws. You've understood rhythm and mind, but understanding without embodiment is still noise. And so the first Hermetic practice is not to study more. It is to observe more deeply, to see your own thought moving, to witness emotion as vibration, not identity, to stand at the center of your own mind, not as its prisoner, but as its witness. This is the beginning of inner alchemy, when awareness turns into the fire that refines all things. Most people believe they are thinking, but in truth, they are being thought. They confuse consciousness with cognition, awareness with noise. But if you listen carefully, you will notice there is a voice that speaks and there is one that hears. That which hears is the true self, the Hermetic observer, the eye of clarity hidden behind the storm. When you identify with the voice, you live in reaction. When you identify with the one who hears, you step into creation. And the gap between those two is where freedom lives. The practice begins simply. Sit in silence. Let thoughts move as they wish. Do not interfere. Do not analyze. Do not suppress. Just see. At first it will feel unbearable. The mind will resist. It will scream for distraction, like a restless child denied its toy. It will throw memories, doubts, plans, irritations, anything to avoid being seen. That's because observation disempowers illusion. The ego cannot survive exposure. It needs constant movement to feel alive. When you stop feeding it with reaction, it starts dissolving. That dissolution is the first transmutation, the nigredo of consciousness. In Hermetic language, this phase is the burning of the dross, the purification of the lower mind. Every unexamined thought you hold is a weight that pulls the compass off its axis. Observation is the act of releasing that weight. It's not about controlling the mind. Control is still reaction. It's about seeing without judgment. Awareness itself is the alchemical fire. What it touches, it transforms. So when anger rises and you simply observe, without naming it, without running from it, you are burning the residue of unconsciousness. The emotion may still arise, but it will not bind you. You've turned reaction into reflection, and reflection into gold. This is the practice that separates the seeker from the initiate. The seeker wants new information. The initiate wants transformation. And transformation only begins when you start seeing yourself seeing. That subtle doubling of awareness. The I am that perceives the I think. It's in that precise instant that you reclaim sovereignty over the field. Because now, you are no longer the storm. You are the sky. The sky doesn't fight the clouds. It lets them pass. And yet, it remains. The clouds may darken, but they never stain the sky. That's your consciousness. Stainless, silent, infinite. The practice of observation is the art of remembering that. At first, the practice feels like doing nothing, and that's why the modern mind struggles with it. It has been trained to equate stillness with uselessness, but in Hermetic thought, stillness is power in its most refined form. Stillness is focused vibration, movement so subtle it becomes invisible. When you observe without reacting, you stop generating new waves of dissonance. The existing waves calm down, the field clears. The compass, long distorted, begins to steady itself. This is not metaphor. It's physics of consciousness. Energy that was once scattered in thought returns to coherence. That's why after silent observation, you feel lighter, as if something heavy but nameless was released. It was the weight of unobserved thought. Observation is not meditation in the popular sense. It's more forensic. You become the scientist of your own psyche. You start noticing patterns, the tone of your inner voice, the loops that repeat, the speed of your thoughts. Every pattern is a rhythm, and every rhythm can be tuned. So observation is not passive. It's preparatory. It's the forge where the new vibration is born. You cannot align a field you refuse to see. The alchemist first studies the matter before he transmutes it. In the same way, you must know your own mind before you refine it. At this point, something paradoxical happens. The more you observe, the less reactive you become. And the less reactive you become, the more clearly you can perceive. Perception itself becomes revelation. You start realizing that your problems were never events and they were interpretations. You stop saying, "I am anxious," and start saying, "Anxiety is present." The difference is vast. In the first, you are trapped. In the second, you are free. Freedom begins when language changes, because language shapes vibration. Hermeticists used speech as precision tool. Every word was a spell. So when you shift from identification to observation, you rewrite the code of your own reality. This practice also trains humility. You begin to see how little of your mind is truly yours. How many thoughts are inherited, how many emotions borrowed. It's unsettling at first, the discovery that you've been living inside a borrowed architecture, but it's also liberating. Because once you see it, you can choose differently. Awareness makes choice possible, and choice is the essence of will. So ironically, by doing nothing, by simply observing, you regain the very will you had lost through compulsive action. This is the secret paradox of Hermetic psychology. Stillness restores power. In the silence of observation, you may encounter discomfort, boredom, sadness, even grief. These are not obstacles. They are residues rising to the surface to be seen and released. Let them come. Everything you feel has been waiting for your permission to dissolve. Observation gives that permission. When you hold awareness steady, emotions lose their power to possess you. They pass like waves, and when they pass, what remains is clarity, the original frequency of the self. At a deeper level, this practice reveals that the observer and the observed are not separate. The act of observation changes what is observed. Modern physics discovered this. Hermetic wisdom knew it millennia ago. When you observe your thoughts without judgment, they begin to slow, soften, and align, because the observer's vibration reorders the observed field. That's why the silence of a true master can calm an entire room. The field of awareness itself radiates coherence. You are learning to become that kind of field. This is where the alchemical process enters its second stage. Albedo, purification. The darkness begins to clear. The mind becomes more transparent. You start to see through yourself, not into yourself. You realize that beneath all content, joy, fear, ambition, memory, there is a witnessing presence untouched by any of it. That presence is your true purpose. Everything else is movement within it. Purpose is not what you do. It's the frequency you are when you stop pretending to be everything else. So the practice of silent observation is not merely about peace, it's about precision. It trains your attention to become laser-like, able to see without distortion. And in that clear seeing, alignment happens naturally. You don't force it, you recognize it, like a compass returning north once the magnetic interference fades. That's what your mind becomes, a compass remembering its original pull toward truth. Now bring this to the practical. For the next 7 days, give yourself 5 minutes a day. No phone, no noise, no input. Sit, breathe, and watch. Notice the moment you get lost in a thought, and gently return to watching. No self-criticism, no goals, no outcome, just the discipline of attention. This simple act recalibrates your frequency more than any ritual, because it teaches you the most fundamental Hermetic lesson. The one who observes is already free. Over time, this practice changes how you live. You start to pause before reacting. You hear your own mental tone. You sense when something resonates and when it fractures your rhythm. That's discernment, the compass in action. And once discernment awakens, confusion cannot survive long, because confusion is simply thought believed too quickly. Observation slows thought until truth reveals itself. And in that stillness, purpose speaks, not in words, but in knowing. When you truly see yourself, your patterns, your resistances, your loops, something softens. Compassion enters. You stop fighting what you find. You start working with it, not against it. That's when the mind and the soul begin to reconcile. You realize you don't need to destroy your mind, you need to refine it. It's not your enemy and it's your instrument. You just forgot how to play it with silence. At the end of this practice, one truth will stand out with crystalline clarity. Silence is not the absence of movement. It's the perfection of rhythm. When you align with it, everything else realigns by itself. Your thoughts become symphonic. Your emotions become musical. Your actions become inevitable. That's how purpose is revealed. Not found, not achieved, but heard. And perhaps, as you sit in that stillness, you'll notice something subtle. A warmth behind the eyes, a pulse in the chest, a vibration too delicate to name. That's you. Not the mind, not the persona. You, the silent awareness that was here before thought began. It has no need to prove itself. It only wants to be remembered. And that remembrance, quiet, inevitable, alive, is the first step home. When silence reveals something, it must be anchored. Otherwise it fades. Every initiation requires inscription. So write what echoed, not in haste, not to be seen, but as continuation of the ritual. Your words, once released, become vibration again. Someone you'll never meet might find their compass through what you write. This is how the lineage continues. Silently, invisibly, yet undeniably. Your insight is not personal. It's ancestral. Give it form before it dissolves back into light. Writing has always been more than communication. In every mystery tradition, from Egypt to Eleusis, writing was considered a form of magic. A sacred act that gave shape to vibration. The ancients didn't write to remember, they wrote to create. Each symbol was a vessel for energy, each word a spell that crystallized invisible movement into matter. Today, we write without reverence. We pour noise onto pages the way we pour thought into the void. But Hermetic practice invites us to remember. Writing is alchemy. It transforms what is formless into form. It turns vibration into symbol, and symbol back into awareness. This is why the second Hermetic practice is vibrational journaling. Not journaling your days, but decoding your frequency. When you begin this practice, you stop asking, "What happened to me today?" and start asking, "What did I vibrate today?" You stop recording events and start recording energy. You begin to notice how thoughts felt, heavy or light, fast or spacious, coherent or fragmented. You track rhythm, not routine. Because purpose is not revealed through what you did. It's revealed through the vibration you sustained while doing it. Every action carries a frequency signature. When you learn to see that, you begin to trace the invisible architecture of your life. Patterns emerge. The moments when you felt aligned and the moments when you drifted. The journal becomes your mirror of coherence. The process is simple but not easy. Each night before sleep, write 3 things. A moment of alignment, when you felt in rhythm. A moment of dissonance, when your energy fractured. The tone of your inner field right now, without judgment, without editing. Describe it not with concepts, but with sensory language. Sharp, slow, warm, metallic, fluid. You're teaching yourself to speak the language of vibration again, the original language of the psyche. Hermetic philosophy reminds us, energy is thought in motion. By describing vibration, you reclaim awareness of motion before it solidifies into thought. And awareness is mastery. At first, this practice may feel strange. The mind wants to tell stories. Who said what went wrong, how it felt unfair. But the alchemist isn't interested in narrative. He's interested in frequency. He knows that every story is just energy disguised as meaning. So instead of explaining, you describe. Instead of analyzing, you sense. You begin to feel the difference between emotions that drain and emotions that build. You start noticing that certain words you use often, always, never, should, carry heavy tones. Each word, repeated daily, tunes your frequency. The journal becomes your tuning fork. It shows you the invisible loops your vibration is trapped in. In Hermetic language, this practice corresponds to citrinitas, the yellow phase where light begins to return after purification. You're learning to illuminate your own patterns with conscious language. Every entry becomes a mirror reflecting how thought and energy dance together. You start realizing that the low days are not failures. They are slower frequencies, asking for integration, and the high days are not luck. They are coherence moments, proof of alignment. This awareness alone changes everything, because once you can read your own rhythm, you stop fearing fluctuation. You start seeing the law of rhythm operating inside you, and instead of resisting the down cycles, you use them to refine your tone. The deeper you go, the more precise you become. Soon, you start noticing correlations. Certain environments lower your vibration. Certain conversations leave static. Certain activities, writing, walking, silence, raise your coherence. What was once random becomes rhythmic. You see that alignment is not an abstract state. It's a practical calibration. You are learning the science of your own soul. This is Hermetic psychology in its purest form. Self-observation applied through language. At the psychological level, vibrational journaling activates metacognition, the ability to think about your thinking. But unlike ordinary introspection, it doesn't loop in self-criticism. It expands perception, because you're not asking, why am I like this? You're asking, what frequency am I transmitting right now? That shift changes everything. Why feeds identity. What reveals vibration. And when you work with vibration, change becomes immediate. You don't fight thoughts, you tune them. Over time, the journal starts speaking back to you. You'll read past entries and realize that certain tones keep repeating, the same frustrations, the same emotions. But now you see them as cycles, not failures. You begin to respect your patterns, because behind every repetition is an unlearned law. The page becomes your teacher, not judging, not lecturing, just mirroring. And slowly, through this daily dialogue, you begin to recognize the sound of your authentic frequency. That's your true north. Every other tone was interference. At this stage, you can add a second layer to the practice, vibrational rewriting. When you notice a recurring low frequency, a phrase like I can't or it's always hard, rewrite it in alignment with rhythm. But don't force positivity. Force creates resistance. Instead, write truthfully, rhythmically. For example, I can't do this becomes, this is my edge. I'm learning its rhythm. The mind relaxes. The field realigns. That's Hermetic reprogramming, turning friction into flow through language that reflects universal law. You're not lying to yourself. You're aligning yourself. In time, the journal becomes sacred space, your private laboratory of transmutation. Ink becomes the philosopher's fire. Paper becomes the vessel. Each entry an act of integration. You begin to feel gratitude for your own complexity, for every emotion that once frightened you. Because now you see, nothing inside you was ever against you. It was just misunderstood energy. That's the essence of alchemy. Nothing is rejected. Everything is refined. You'll start to notice too that the act of writing slows your thoughts. It translates the abstract into the tangible. And by giving it form, you take away its power to dominate unconsciously. Thought becomes word. Word becomes symbol. Symbol becomes silence again. The full circle of mental alchemy. This is not journaling for memory. It's journaling for coherence. You're stabilizing frequency through the discipline of articulation. The practice has another hidden function. It anchors your awareness in time. Modern life fractures perception. Thousands of inputs, fragments of attention. But writing demands presence. You can't write and scroll at the same time. When you journal vibrationally, you reclaim ownership of your own tempo. You slow down to the speed of consciousness. And that slowing down is precisely what rhythm requires. You are training yourself to live in divine tempo, not mechanical, not forced, but harmonized. If you do this for 7 days, something subtle happens. You start to anticipate misalignment before it happens. You feel when your vibration begins to drift, and you can correct it before it manifests externally. That's the mark of a Hermetic practitioner, preemptive awareness. You no longer need crisis to wake you. You read the signs within. That is mastery, not control. but coherence. Let's frame this as ritual. Each night when you open the journal, imagine you're entering your own inner temple. The candle, the pen, the breath, all become instruments of sacred calibration. Write as if the universe were listening through you, because it is. Every sentence is a signal sent into the field. Write slowly. Let words choose you. When you finish, read what you wrote not with judgment, but with reverence. Then close the journal and say inwardly, "This is who I am vibrating now, and I am willing to refine it." That sentence seals the act. It tells the subconscious, the alchemist is awake. As days pass, your entries will begin to shift in tone. More simplicity, more stillness, more precision. That's the sign of integration, the movement from self-explanation to self-knowledge. You'll find yourself writing less, but meaning more, because alignment has no need for excess. Clarity economizes language the way truth economizes time. When you reach that stage, your writing will start manifesting faster. What you write becomes real, not because of mysticism, but because your vibration and action are synchronized. The field no longer has to translate confusion. It receives a clear command and reality responds. You've become the conscious author of your world, not through effort, but through coherence. That's why the Hermeticists said, to write is to bind energy to form. Every letter, every curve, every pause is a geometrical expression of vibration. So write as a priest of your own psyche. Write like one who knows that words don't describe reality, they summon it. When you journal with that awareness, every page becomes a portal, and every sentence a spell of remembrance. Eventually, you won't need to write to know your frequency. You'll feel it instantly, in tone, in movement, in silence. But the practice remains a sacred ritual, the mirror that never lies. And whenever you feel lost again, return to the page, because the ink remembers what the mind forgets. And purpose, once written in vibration, never disappears. It only waits for you to realign with it. You've learned to write vibration into form, to turn the invisible into language. And like every alchemist, you now stand at the threshold of the next transmutation. The sequence continues, not forward, but inward. Below, the thread extends. Follow it as one would follow intuition, without rush, without doubt. Every path has a rhythm. Every rhythm has a destination. This one leads exactly where your compass has been pointing all along. Every philosophy must eventually touch the ground. Silence, reflection, vibration, all of it means nothing if it does not translate into how you move in the world. The mind creates, rhythm sustains, but it is action that anchors the invisible into form. Yet Hermetic action is not ordinary movement. It is not compulsion, nor routine, nor obligation. It is rhythm expressed through body and choice, the final octave of coherence. When thought, emotion, and action move together, you are no longer a person acting. You are life expressing itself through precision. We've been taught that willpower is the engine of success, but true will is not about forcing. It is about timing, moving when the current moves. Rhythmic action is not doing more. It's doing with awareness. It's learning to sense when the field opens and when it closes, when to advance and when to wait, when to speak and when to listen. That discernment is the art of rhythm made practical, and this is what separates exhaustion from expansion, the ability to act in harmony with the pulse of life. Most people move from anxiety. They act to escape silence, to prove worth, to quiet the fear of stillness. Their actions are reactions, extensions of confusion. That's why they achieve, but never arrive. Because when movement comes from fear, it creates more fear. The Hermetic initiate acts from clarity, not urgency. He knows that the quality of an action depends entirely on the vibration that precedes it. An act born from alignment multiplies coherence. An act born from chaos multiplies distortion. So before you act, the question is not, what should I do? It is, from where in me is this action arising? When rhythm replaces will, life begins to feel timed, almost musical. You begin to sense a kind of pulse inside situations. Some moments invite movement, others invite stillness, and you start realizing that forcing movement when stillness is required breaks the law of rhythm. It's like shouting over the song you're meant to sing. True mastery is to feel that invisible tempo and move in resonance with it. That's why the ancients said, "The wise move as the planets move, never too early, never too late. Let's make this real. Imagine your day as a score. Each moment is a note. Each choice, a rhythm. If you rush, the music loses shape. If you delay, the rhythm falters. So the practice is not to move faster. It's to move consciously, to bring awareness into every gesture, however small. Walking, speaking, eating, working, all become instruments of alignment. You're not trying to control time, you're synchronizing with it. When that synchronization deepens, time itself starts feeling different, slower, more expansive, almost sacred. That's what the Hermeticists meant by living in kairos, not chronos. Time as rhythm, not as measurement. This is where microactions become your greatest teachers. Every small task, sending an email, washing a dish, greeting a stranger, becomes a mirror for your inner rhythm. Do you rush? Do you resist? Do you feel agitation while pretending calm? Each gesture reveals the vibration behind it, and when you bring awareness to the gesture, you begin to tune it. You move with care, precision, presence. Suddenly, even mundane actions radiate purpose, because purpose is not found in what you do. It's expressed in how you do it. Hermetic psychology teaches that rhythm is the bridge between mind and matter. Without rhythm, thought cannot become form. That's why ritual exists, not as superstition, but as structured rhythm. Every spiritual discipline, prayer, mantra, movement, uses repetition to create coherence between dimensions. You can live the same way. By creating small rhythmic actions that mirror your intention, you stabilize your vibration in the world. For example, if your purpose is clarity, act with clarity. Organize your space, finish what you start, speak with precision. If your purpose is compassion, move slowly, listen fully, breathe before you respond. Rhythm is coherence enacted. Every action becomes an anchor that locks vibration into reality. But to reach that point, you must abandon the addiction to outcome. The ego acts for reward, the soul acts for rhythm. When you act only for result, you break the flow, because you're no longer present in the action. You're already in the future. The Hermetic way is to be entirely in the act itself. No attachment, no resistance, only presence. That's the difference between reaction and ritual. Reaction consumes energy. Ritual generates it. When every gesture becomes ritual, your life becomes ceremony, not because it's mystical, but because it's fully lived. Now understand the deeper layer. Rhythmic action is emotional regulation in motion. Your outer rhythm mirrors your inner state. When you rush, it's not because you're late, it's because your field is fragmented. When you procrastinate, it's not because you're lazy, it's because your vibration is misaligned with the action. Both are symptoms of dissonance. Rhythmic action restores coherence. When you act from the correct rhythm, resistance disappears. You stop fighting yourself. The movement feels inevitable, not because it's easy, but because it's true. There's an ancient Hermetic saying, "The sun does not hurry, yet everything is done." That's the mantra of rhythmic action, to move as the sun moves. Radiant, precise, effortless. The sun doesn't rush to rise, nor resist to set. It obeys rhythm and, in doing so, sustains worlds. You too sustain worlds with your rhythm. The worlds of your relationships, your work, your creativity, your inner peace. Each rises or falls according to the harmony of your motion. So when you move consciously, you restore harmony not only within yourself, but in everything your life touches. Here is the practical ritual. Each morning, before engaging the world, pause for 1 minute. Listen for your inner rhythm. Ask, what tempo is truth asking of me today? Is it a day for expansion or consolidation, for movement or reflection? Then choose one action that embodies that rhythm. Not 5, just 1. Do it with full presence, breathe with it. Let it set the tone for the day. This is not productivity, it's participation. You're aligning your field with the day's vibration before the noise begins. Throughout the day, keep listening. The rhythm will shift. That's natural. When you feel agitation, slow down. When you feel stagnation, move. Your awareness is the metronome. By the end of the day, you'll notice you accomplished more with less effort, not because you worked harder, but because you stopped swimming against the current. This is Hermetic efficiency, alignment instead of acceleration. As you practice this, rhythm becomes intuitive. You no longer plan it, You feel it. Your body becomes the instrument through which rhythm expresses itself. Your breath becomes your tempo. Your actions become coherent sequences, unfolding with mathematical grace. Life feels lighter because you're no longer resisting its natural pulse. Even challenges appear timed. Even pauses feel sacred. You stop asking, "Why is this happening?" and start asking, "What is this rhythm teaching me?" At the psychological level, rhythmic action dissolves self-doubt. Because when you act in sync with rhythm, you feel guided, not by logic, but by resonance. The Hermeticists called this divine timing. It's not mysticism. It's the intelligence of the field responding to coherence. When your action harmonizes with universal rhythm, outcomes align effortlessly. What seemed coincidence becomes consequence. You attract not because you chase, but because you move when life moves. Rhythmic action also teaches trust. It asks you to release the illusion of control and embrace timing as your teacher. The ego says, "Now." The self says, "Wait until it breathes." The ego panics in stillness. The self rests in it. When you move with the pulse of the universe, you stop fearing delay, because you understand that delay is rhythm preparing your next note. You start trusting silence as much as movement. That's freedom. Eventually, rhythmic action becomes your meditation. You no longer separate spiritual practice from daily life. Your life is the practice. You wash the dish as if you were cleansing the mind. You walk as if tracing sacred geometry on the ground. You speak as if each word carried vibration, and because it does, and every action becomes an offering to rhythm itself. In this way, purpose ceases to be theory. It becomes the choreography of your existence. If you've come this far, understand this truth. Rhythm doesn't just replace will, it refines it. It turns effort into elegance, struggle into flow, chaos into choreography. It doesn't demand belief, it demands awareness. The moment you remember to listen, the rhythm reveals itself. The compass steadies, the pace becomes sacred, and your entire life begins to move like music returning to its key. If you felt the rhythm moving through you, don't leave it suspended. Rhythm demands embodiment. Stand, breathe, place your hand over your chest and feel the pulse. That beat is your contract with the universe. Whisper inwardly, "I move when rhythm moves." That is your vow. Silent, invisible, binding. No subscription required, only remembrance. Yet if you feel called to stay, stay as rhythm would. Naturally, inevitably, without doubt. Because resonance never asks, it attracts. There is a silence that follows true alignment. A silence that doesn't feel like absence but completion. It's not the quiet after effort, it's the quiet of inevitability. When your mind, emotion, and action begin to move as one, the world stops resisting you. Not because it changed, but because you finally started moving with it. This is what the ancients called the Great Return, the moment the inner compass points north again, and life becomes not a search but a symphony. You may have spent years running toward meaning, collecting knowledge, chasing clarity, trying to find your purpose. But purpose cannot be found, because it was never lost. It was simply buried beneath interference, noise, fear, urgency, comparison. When the interference dissolves, what remains is what always was. A steady hum inside you, calm and luminous, asking for nothing, knowing everything. That hum is your purpose. It's not a destination, it's a vibration. And it was waiting, patiently, for you to quiet enough to hear it again. You were not meant to live by momentum. You were meant to live by magnetism. To move not because you must, but because you are drawn, effortlessly, instinctively, rhythmically. When you move by magnetism, the path feels guided, but you no longer need proof. Synchronicities appear, not as surprises, but as confirmations. Every conversation, every delay, every detour begins to make sense. Life stops feeling random and starts revealing its precise geometry. That is the first sign that your compass has realigned. Reality begins to mirror your internal order. The Hermeticists taught that when the microcosm and the macrocosm vibrate in harmony, destiny unfolds as if by design. That's not fate, it's frequency coherence. The law of correspondence reveals it perfectly. As within, so without. The alignment you cultivated, through silence, awareness, rhythm, and practice, and becomes visible in form. Your relationships shift, your body relaxes. Opportunities match your vibration instead of testing it. You speak less, but each word lands deeper. You act less, but each action carries more weight. This is not magic. This is the physics of precision. The compass realigned doesn't point outward, it points inward. And that shift changes everything. You stop asking, "Where am I going?" You start asking, "From where am I moving?" The external world ceases to dictate tempo. The internal rhythm leads. You move through the same chaos as everyone else, but it no longer touches you the same way. You become permeable but unshaken, aware that everything external is an echo, and your only task is to maintain frequency. That's hermetic living, being in the world, but not of its distortion. In psychological terms, this is integration, the union of conscious and unconscious thought and instinct. The split that once drained you heals. The self that was fragmented becomes a single movement again. You think in one direction, feel in the same, and act accordingly. That's coherence, the signature of mastery. And with coherence, peace becomes natural. You no longer seek balance. You are balance. You no longer search for truth. You embody it. Because truth, like purpose, was never elsewhere. It was always the tone beneath the noise. At this level, even suffering changes texture. Pain no longer feels like punishment. It feels like purification. You begin to see discomfort as the universe's way of tuning your vibration, not to harm you, but to refine you. You recognize that life is not against you. It's adjusting you to your own higher frequency. Every tension becomes information. Every challenge becomes calibration. You no longer take things personally. You take them symbolically. That's when the mundane turns mystical, not because the world changed, but because you did. When the compass realigns, choices become simple. Not because life becomes easy, but because the noise of indecision disappears. You can feel truth now, not as thought, but as temperature. Every person, place, or idea vibrates differently. You can sense which ones expand your field and which ones collapse it. So you stop negotiating with confusion. You simply move in the direction that feels like clarity. That's discernment. The compass made flesh. You realize that purpose is not a single mission. It's a continuous alignment, a dance between polarity and stillness, effort and surrender, sound and silence. Every day becomes an act of tuning, and when you fall out of rhythm, as you will, you no longer spiral. You simply return. Return to silence. Return to rhythm. Return to the journal. Return to presence. Return because the compass never breaks. It only waits. This return is what the alchemists called rubedo, the red phase, the completion, the gold, the moment when inner and outer, heaven and earth, thought and form, vibrate as one continuum. The philosopher's stone was never an object. It was this state of mind, unfragmented, luminous, steady. To reach it is not to escape the world, but to stand in it without being moved by its illusion. You become your own center of gravity. Purpose stops being a question. It becomes the pulse behind every breath. Now, take a moment. Breathe. You've crossed the entire arc. Confusion, awareness, rhythm, action, coherence. This was never a lesson. It was a remembering. What you've read is not new information. It's a reflection of what your soul always knew. That's why certain phrases didn't teach you. They resonated. Resonance is memory returning. You didn't learn your purpose. You remembered its tone. And if you listen now, you'll notice it. The faint, magnetic hum of your own field. Quiet, but certain. That's the compass steady again. Not pointing to a place, but to a vibration. Not leading you away from life, but deeper into it. Because your path is not somewhere else. It's the way you walk. Purpose is not what you find. It's what you become when you finally stop searching. From here, life will not get easier. It will get clearer. The world will still test your rhythm, but now you'll know. Every test is a tuning. Every silence is sacred. Every step is aligned. You'll fall again into confusion, but only to rise in coherence. Because alignment is not a destination. It's a discipline, a devotion to inner order. And once you've tasted it, disorder no longer satisfies. The greatest secret of the Hermetic path is this. You were never meant to escape the labyrinth. You were meant to remember you built it. And the moment you remember, the walls dissolve. Because the labyrinth was only your mind learning how to listen. Now you can walk freely, knowing that every corridor, every turn, every silence was necessary to bring you here, to the still point where thought bows to rhythm, And rhythm reveals purpose. So let the compass rest. Don't rush to define what comes next. You don't need to plan the path. You are the path. Just move, breathe, and let the rhythm carry you. Because once alignment is remembered, every direction becomes north. You've crossed. The silence feels different now. Not empty, but inhabited. You are no longer the seeker. You are the signal. What comes next isn't a new video. It's the continuation of this one inside your days. Yet another portal waits. Quiet, luminous, humming at the same frequency. When the time feels right, follow that hum. The journey never ends. It refines. Because once the compass realigns, every direction becomes north, and the next portal is already open.